Hi, Natasha. This is Paul Palmer, and
Natasha Todorovic Cowan, great to be with you today, Paul.
yes, nice to be back again, Natasha. It's been a while. Well, a
It
couple of weeks,
has,
it feels like.
yeah, I know, and it looks like you're in the mood for playing games.
Well, I thought we'd talk about risk and the Jenga game. This guy is taking the big risk by taking the block right from the bottom.
You
And as
know, I think he needs to go a little bit lower. That would be more fun.
I think I'd be probably taking one near the top.
So this is a difference in our willingness to take risks, obviously.
It is. It is.
So, so how do you see that show up in your work?
Well, when you're looking at the pharmaceuticals, the the risk is always the assessment that they're making as to whether they're going to place a product on the market and treat patients. So, for example, with the coronavirus, I've just had my second injection, and the risk is was I was looking at the figures before I got a second shot, and it said 45 million people have been injected, and there were about 341 up to a certain date that had blood clots, and of those, there were 8 fatalities. And I thought, well, I know a few people that have died from catching coronavirus. I know a few people that have been out of action for a month or more. And I know other people who've got long-term side effects from coronavirus.
Yeah.
And 8 in 45 million is not very many people. And they
Okay.
had the underlying condition in the first place of
Mhm.
low platelet count. Well, I know
Mhm.
I haven't got a low platelet count.
Mhm.
So I thought, I'll put up with the sore arm if it happens. I had no response to the first injection. And apparently, with this one that I've got, the second injection's got less of a response than the first one, as in side effects. So I thought, seems like really low risk to me.
That seems like almost no risk. So for you, no risk is low risk.
Well, I've always looked at the work that I do in terms of risk, because even in my first job we were looking at how to treat patients, of course, but I was looking at sterile products. So in sterile products, there's what you call a tolerance for error. So what level of tolerance are you allowed to accept that one product that you're shipping out might be contaminated? And the first thing you do in the process is you do a validation. So you do a validation of your run for your sterilization based on the level of bioburden, so the level of contamination in your product before you put it in the sterilizer. And what you look for is, how are we going to achieve a 6 log reduction? So if there's 1 million organisms in 1 gram of the product, then it's going to wipe out all of it completely.
Mm, got it. Well, look, I think for that, if it's going to impact people, I'm with you. Low, almost no risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's the game, let's see what happens.
If it's Jenga, you're going to take the one out from the bottom. Yes.
Yes, let's just see how far we can go.
It's interesting though, because a lot of people don't explain risk when you first start in manufacturing or distribution. They don't think about the employees can help if there's a problem. They can
Yeah.
avoid risk by understanding why you're doing things a certain way, but they don't bother training them.
Well, I think particularly when it comes to change, people don't measure how people prefer to change
No.
and the way they handle risk and whether they're going to look before they leap or leap and then look is really an underlying factor in how people prefer change to happen and how they address things. And that all goes to how are they going to handle risk.
Yeah. Yes, and I suppose some people are already thinking in terms of risk, whereas others need to be introduced to it so that they understand what the implications of what they're doing in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean the analogy, I think, particularly corporate versus entrepreneurial, is corporate tends to be much more low risk.
Mm.
And what they like about the entrepreneur is the success they end up having after they've risked multiple times.
Yeah, but not very many people talk about the ones that have taken the massive risk when they've made a change and they've pivoted and gone bankrupt.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
because we celebrate success
yeah.
and we shame failure.
Well, I think a lot of the time we celebrate success and ignore the failures.
Yeah, that's why it's hidden. I agree.
Ignore it completely. All these people have gone bankrupt. There's, what is it, 4 million people more unemployed as a result of the 1 year pandemic. Can you believe it's like 5 times as many people unemployed just because of 1 year?
That's
It
crazy.
doesn't make sense. It does make sense, but it's a little bit, I believe, outside of the um, comprehension. No, it's outside of the bounds of most people's what I would call concept. So when you
Mhm.
understand a concept, it's like you were saying about how averse you are or willing to change. If you don't understand the concept of where you're going from and where you're going to, well, how do you know, how are you going to get to the point where you're willing to consider it and accept it?
And we have a formula of how do you get from where, from what, where are we now, to where are we going? And defining those two, big deal. Most people, you're right, don't spend the time to define the from what nor the to what.
Yeah.
Oh, we might have to talk about that another time.
I think we'll talk about that next. Interesting idea. Okay, that's Paul Palmer, and
Natasha Todorovic Cowan, great being with you.
good to see you again, Natasha.